Lisa Chen's hands shook as she counted the coins for the third time, hoping somehow the amount would magically increase. $3.47. That's all she had left in the entire world. The worn bills felt soft between her fingers, and the coins clinked together with a sound that seemed to echo her desperation. Standing in aisle 7 of the local grocery store, Lisa felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her shoulders. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, casting a harsh glow over the rows of bread that stretched before her. Each loaf represented a choice she didn't want to make. The expensive whole-grain bread that 8-year-old Amy loved was completely out of reach. Even the regular white bread felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Just 2 weeks ago, Lisa had been cleaning offices downtown, working the night shift while her children slept. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and kept food on the table. Then came that terrible Tuesday morning when her supervisor pulled her aside with apologetic eyes and explained that the company was cutting costs. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal, they said. But it felt deeply personal when you're a single mom with 2 kids depending on you. The unemployment office had been helpful, sure, but benefits take time to process. 2 weeks, they told her. Maybe 3. In the meantime, she had to stretch every penny until it screamed. The little bit of savings she had disappeared faster than she ever imagined possible. First went the money for Amy's school supplies. Then she had to choose between keeping the internet on or buying groceries. The internet won that round because Amy needed it for homework, but now even that was about to be cut off. Lisa picked up the cheapest loaf of bread, checking the price twice. $2.19. That would leave her with just over $1 for something else. Maybe a jar of peanut butter. The kids could eat peanut butter sandwiches for a few days. It wasn't much, but it was something. Amy had been so understanding when Lisa explained they needed to be careful with money for a while. The little girl had even offered to give up her allowance, not understanding that there was no allowance anymore. Ben, at 5 years old, didn't quite grasp what was happening. He kept asking for his favorite cereal, the kind with the cartoon character on the box. Lisa had to explain over and over that they were trying new foods now, cheaper foods. This morning, both kids had eaten plain cereal with water because the milk had run out yesterday. The memory of Ben's confused face when he tasted it made her stomach turn. Walking toward the peanut butter section, Lisa's phone buzzed in her pocket. Her heart sank immediately. These days, phone calls and text messages rarely brought good news. She pulled out her cracked phone screen and saw the notification. Electric company. Final notice. Pay within 48 hours or service will be disconnected. Lisa leaned against her shopping cart, feeling dizzy. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? 3 months ago, she had been managing fine. Not thriving, but managing. She had a job, the kids were happy, and she could even afford small treats occasionally. Now she was standing in a grocery store trying to decide between feeding her children and keeping the lights on. The peanut butter aisle felt endless. So many choices for people who could afford to choose. Creamy, chunky, organic, all-natural. Lisa reached for the store brand. The absolute cheapest option available. $3.98. Her heart sank. Even the cheapest peanut butter was more than she had left after buying bread. She stood there holding the jar, doing math in her head. If she put back the bread and just bought peanut butter, the kids could eat it with crackers. But they didn't have crackers at home. If she bought the bread and skipped the peanut butter, they could eat plain bread. Neither option felt right. Neither option felt like enough. Other shoppers moved around her, their carts filled with items she couldn't even dream of affording. Fresh fruits, meat, snacks for their kids. A woman passed by with a cart loaded with groceries, talking loudly on her phone about weekend plans. Lisa felt invisible, like her struggles were happening in a parallel universe that nobody else could see. She thought about calling her sister in another state, but pride held her back. Besides, her sister had her own family to worry about, her own bills to pay. Lisa had always been the independent one, the one who figured things out on her own. Asking for help felt like admitting complete failure. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. Every decision she made affected 2 little people who trusted her completely. Amy and Ben didn't know that their mom had been applying for jobs every day, that she'd been turned down from 3 different positions just this week. They didn't know that she lay awake at night wondering how she'd keep them safe and fed and housed. To them, she was still mom, still the person who could fix anything and make everything okay. Lisa made her decision. She put the peanut butter back on the shelf and kept only the bread. At least it was something. She could make it last a few days. Maybe stretch it with whatever was left in the kitchen cabinets at home. There might be some old crackers, maybe a can of soup hiding in the back of the pantry. Walking toward the checkout lanes, Lisa felt tears starting to build behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry here, not in public, not where people could see her falling apart. She had to be strong, had to hold it together for Amy and Ben. They were waiting at home, probably playing with their toys or watching cartoons on the old television, trusting that Mom would come home with food. The self-checkout line was shorter, and Lisa preferred it anyway. Less chance of awkward small talk with a cashier who might ask how her day was going. She didn't think she could handle polite conversation right now without breaking down completely. As she scanned the bread and fumbled with her coins, Lisa's stomach growled loudly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a full meal. Everything went to the kids first, always. That's what moms do. But she was starting to feel weak, starting to worry that her body wouldn't hold up much longer under this kind of stress and hunger. The receipt printed with a mechanical whir. 1 loaf of bread, $2.19. Lisa folded it carefully and put it in her worn purse next to the final notice from the electric company. Tomorrow she'd have to figure out the next step, the next impossible choice between basic necessities that should never be luxuries. Walking toward the exit, carrying her single bag of bread, Lisa tried to think of how she'd explain dinner to Amy and Ben. Maybe she could make it sound like an adventure, like they were camping indoors. Kids were good at pretending, good at finding joy in simple things. Maybe that would be enough to get them through another day. David Kim had been having the kind of day that most people would call perfect. The quarterly board meeting had gone better than expected. 3 major clients had renewed their contracts, and his tech company's new software launch was trending on social media. After celebrating with his team at an expensive downtown restaurant, he'd decided to stop by the neighborhood grocery store to pick up some coffee for tomorrow morning. Walking through the automatic doors, David loosened his tie and rolled up the sleeves of his custom-tailored shirt. The store felt different from his usual high-end shopping spots, more real somehow. Families with children navigated the aisles. Elderly couples compared prices, and teenagers worked their first jobs behind the registers. It reminded him of the small corner store where his immigrant parents used to shop when he was young. Back when every dollar mattered. That's when he noticed her in aisle 7. At first glance, Lisa looked like any other shopper examining bread options, but something in her posture caught David's attention. The way she held herself, shoulders slightly hunched, head down, suggested someone carrying an invisible weight. He watched from a distance as she picked up a loaf, checked the price, then put it back and reached for a cheaper one. David had developed an eye for reading people during his years in business. Success often depended on understanding what others were really thinking, what they needed but weren't saying. Right now, his instincts were telling him this woman was in trouble. He pretended to shop for pasta sauce while keeping Lisa in his peripheral vision. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were clean but worn, the kind of careful maintenance that spoke of someone who took pride in their appearance despite limited resources. When she pulled out her phone and read something on the screen, David saw her whole body sag as if she'd received terrible news. Lisa walked toward the peanut butter section, moving slowly like someone trying to delay an unpleasant decision. David found himself following at a distance, not sure why he felt compelled to observe this stranger's shopping trip. Maybe it was the memory of his own mother, standing in similar aisles decades ago, counting coins and making impossible choices between necessities. When Lisa picked up a jar of peanut butter and studied the price, David could see the calculation happening in her mind. Her lips moved slightly as she did mental math, and her free hand unconsciously patted her pocket where she probably kept her money. After a long moment, she put the jar back on the shelf with a resignation that made David's chest tighten. She kept only the bread. David watched Lisa walk toward the checkout area, and something about the slump of her shoulders told a story he recognized. This wasn't someone choosing to buy less, this was someone who couldn't afford more. The single loaf of bread in her hands represented a meal plan, probably for more than just herself. At the self-checkout, Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she counted out coins. David was close enough now to see that she was paying with small bills and loose change, the kind of money you scrape together from couch cushions and car cup holders. When her stomach growled audibly, she quickly looked around, embarrassed, pressing her hand against her abdomen. That sound hit David like a physical blow. This woman was hungry. Actually hungry. When was the last time he'd experienced real hunger? The kind that gnaws at you and makes your body weak? He couldn't remember. His problems were things like choosing between restaurants or deciding which vacation destination to book. This woman's problems were about basic survival. David's mind raced back to a conversation with his mother just last month. She'd been reminiscing about their early years in America, how neighbors and strangers had helped their family when they had nothing. "Someone always helped us when we needed it most," she'd said. "That's how we survived until we could help ourselves." Lisa finished paying and was walking toward the exit when David made his decision. He approached carefully, not wanting to startle or embarrass her further. "Excuse me," he said gently, his voice soft and respectful. Lisa turned, and David could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she quickly wiped at her cheeks with the back of her hand. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the kind that comes from stress rather than just lack of sleep. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I'm fine. Just having a difficult day." David's heart broke a little more. Even in her obvious distress, she was apologizing to him, trying to minimize her pain to avoid troubling a stranger. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed upset," David said, choosing his words carefully. "I don't want to intrude, but is there anything I can do to help?" Lisa's immediate response was to shake her head and take a step back. "Thank you, but I'm okay, really." But as she spoke, her stomach growled again, even louder this time. The sound seemed to echo in the space between them, and Lisa's face flushed with embarrassment. She looked down at her single bag containing one loaf of bread, and David could see the shame in her expression. "When did you last eat?" David asked gently. The question seemed to catch Lisa off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again, apparently realizing that the truth would only confirm what David already suspected. "I'm not asking to make you uncomfortable," David continued. "I'm asking because I've been where you are. Not recently, but I remember what it feels like to count every penny, to choose between things that shouldn't be choices." Lisa looked up at him with surprise. This well-dressed man with his expensive watch and confident manner had been hungry? Had struggled with money? "My parents came here with nothing," David explained. "I remember my mom standing in grocery stores just like this one, trying to figure out how to feed our family on almost no money. I remember the kindness of strangers who helped us when we needed it most." Something in his tone, the genuine warmth and lack of judgment, made Lisa's defenses begin to crumble. Tears started flowing again, and this time she didn't try to hide them. "I lost my job," she whispered, the words coming out in a rush. "2 weeks ago. I have 2 kids at home, and I don't know how I'm going to feed them dinner tonight. This bread is all I can afford, and I don't even know if that's enough." David felt his own eyes getting watery. This brave woman, this mother doing everything she could for her children, shouldn't have to choose between bread and peanut butter. "What if we go back inside?" David suggested quietly. "And you get whatever you and your kids need? I'll take care of it." Lisa's first instinct was to refuse. "I can't ask you to do that. I don't even know your name." "You're not asking. I'm offering. And my name is David." "Lisa," she replied automatically, then immediately looked confused about why she'd shared that information with a stranger. "Lisa, I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you," David said. "I'm doing this because someone helped my family once, and it made all the difference. Maybe someday you'll be able to help someone else." Lisa stood there in the store entrance, holding her single bag of bread, looking at this stranger who was offering to change her day, maybe even change her life. Part of her wanted to run, to maintain what was left of her pride. But a bigger part, the part that was responsible for 2 children waiting at home, knew she couldn't let pride stand in the way of feeding her family. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David smiled. The first real smile he'd had all day. "I'm absolutely sure." Walking back into the store felt surreal for Lisa. Just minutes ago, she'd been leaving with a single loaf of bread, wondering how she'd explain dinner to Amy and Ben. Now she was pushing a shopping cart while this kind stranger named David walked beside her, encouraging her to think about what her family actually needed. "Start with the basics," David said gently. "What would you normally buy for your kids?" Lisa felt overwhelmed by the question. It had been so long since she'd been able to buy what they needed rather than what they could afford. Her mind went blank for a moment, like someone had asked her to remember a foreign language she used to speak fluently. Milk, she said finally. The kids need milk. And maybe some eggs. Ben loves scrambled eggs for breakfast. David nodded encouragingly. Sounds perfect. Lead the way. In the dairy section, Lisa hesitated in front of the milk display. Her hand automatically reached for the smallest container, the one that would last maybe 2 days. David noticed and gently suggested the larger size. But that's almost $6. Lisa protested, her voice small. Lisa, David said softly, today you don't have to think about prices. Just think about what Amy and Ben need. The concept felt foreign to her. For months now, every purchase had been a careful calculation. She'd trained herself to automatically multiply quantities by prices, to compare cost per ounce, to always choose the cheapest option available. Now David was asking her to shop like a normal person, like someone who could afford to feed their family properly. She picked up the gallon of milk with shaking hands. It felt heavy, not just because of its weight, but because of what it represented. Fresh milk for Amy's cereal, enough for Ben to have a second glass if he wanted it. The luxury of not having to ration something as basic as milk. What else? David asked. Eggs, Lisa whispered, and maybe some fruit. Amy loves bananas, but they've been too expensive lately. In the produce section, Lisa found herself standing paralyzed in front of the banana display. David watched her internal struggle and realized how difficult this was for her. She wasn't just choosing groceries. She was fighting against months of forced scarcity thinking. How many bananas would you buy if money wasn't an issue? He asked. Lisa looked at him with wide eyes. If money wasn't an issue? If you were shopping for your family the way you want to shop for them? The question brought tears to Lisa's eyes again. She hadn't thought that way in so long. A whole bunch, she said. Amy eats one every morning with her breakfast, and Ben likes them cut up in his cereal. Then get a whole bunch, David said simply. Lisa selected the bananas carefully, as if she was handling something precious. In a way, she was. These bananas represented normal life, the kind of basic parenting decisions that shouldn't be luxuries but had become impossible dreams. They moved through the store slowly, David patiently waiting as Lisa gradually added items to their cart. Apples for school lunches, a loaf of the good bread that Amy preferred, peanut butter, the name brand kind that actually tasted like peanuts, real butter instead of the cheap margarine that barely spread. At the meat counter, Lisa stopped completely. I can't, she said, shaking her head. This is already too much. David looked at their cart. To him, it contained the basics any family might buy in a single shopping trip. To Lisa, it represented more food than she'd been able to afford in weeks. When did Amy and Ben last have a proper dinner? David asked gently. Lisa's face crumpled. Last week, maybe. I made spaghetti with just sauce. Before that, she trailed off, unable to continue. They're growing kids, David said. They need protein. The butcher, a friendly older man with kind eyes, had been watching their conversation. What can I help you folks with today? Lisa looked helplessly between David and the display case full of meat she couldn't afford. David stepped forward. We need some ground beef for spaghetti, he said, and maybe some chicken for the week. How many people am I feeding? The butcher asked. A mom and 2 kids, David replied. Ages 8 and 5. The butcher nodded knowingly and began selecting packages. This should get you through several good meals, he said, wrapping everything carefully. As they continued shopping, David learned more about Lisa's situation. She told him about her cleaning job, how she'd worked nights so she could be home with the kids during the day, about her ex-husband who'd disappeared without paying child support, leaving her to manage everything alone, about the stack of overdue bills on her kitchen counter that grew thicker every week. What kind of work are you looking for? David asked as they selected pasta and sauce. Anything, Lisa said immediately. I've applied everywhere. Fast food, retail, more cleaning jobs. But everyone wants you to start immediately, and I don't have reliable childcare. The after-school program Amy goes to is already free lunch program and Ben's daycare. She shook her head. I had to pull him out when I lost my job. Can't afford it anymore. David listened carefully, his business mind already working. His company had been growing rapidly and they were always looking for reliable people. More importantly, they had an on-site childcare facility that many employees used. At the cereal aisle, Lisa allowed herself one small indulgence. She picked up a box of the cereal with Ben's favorite cartoon character, the one he'd been asking for. It was $3 more than the plain cereal, but seeing her face light up as she put it in the cart made David understand that sometimes the smallest luxuries mean the most. He's going to be so excited, Lisa murmured, almost to herself. Their cart was full now, fuller than Lisa's had been in months. Milk, eggs, fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, bread, pasta, sauce, and even some snacks for the kids. Normal groceries for a normal family, except nothing about this felt normal to Lisa. At the checkout, the teenage cashier began scanning items with practiced efficiency. Lisa watched the total climb on the digital display, her anxiety growing with each beep. $12, $25, $42, $67. She'd never spent this much on groceries in a single trip, not even when she had a steady job. $89.50, the cashier announced. Will this be cash or card? Lisa's legs felt weak. Nearly $90. She made herself look at David, expecting to see regret in his face, some sign that he was reconsidering his generous offer. Instead, David was already pulling out his wallet, completely calm. Card, he said, handing over a black credit card without hesitation. The transaction went through smoothly. The cashier began bagging groceries, chatting pleasantly about the weather. To everyone else in the store, this was just another normal grocery trip. They had no idea they were witnessing a life-changing moment. Loading bags into Lisa's old car, David watched her carefully arrange everything in her trunk, like she was handling treasures. In the harsh parking lot lights, he could see how thin she'd become, how her clothes hung loose on her frame. "Lisa," he said as they finished loading the last bag, "I want to give you something." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Lisa took it with curious hands, reading the elegant lettering. Kim Technologies, she read aloud. David Kim, Chief Executive Officer. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "You're a CEO?" David nodded. "We're a growing company and we're always looking for good people. People who are responsible, reliable, and understand what it means to work hard." Lisa stared at the card like it might disappear if she blinked. "But I don't have any tech experience. I just cleaned offices." "The position I'm thinking of doesn't require tech experience," David said. "It requires someone trustworthy who can handle responsibility. Someone who shows up, does good work, and cares about doing things right." "I don't understand," Lisa whispered. "Call me Monday morning," David said. "We'll set up a time to talk. And Lisa, we have on-site childcare. Your kids could be with you during the workday." Lisa felt dizzy. She leaned against her car, overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the last hour. This morning she'd woken up wondering how she'd feed her children dinner. Now her trunk was full of groceries and she was holding a business card that might represent a way forward. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, tears streaming down her face again. David thought about his parents, about all the strangers who had helped his family when they needed it most, about the teacher who had encouraged him, the neighbor who had given his mother work, the employer who had taken a chance on a young man with more ambition than experience. "Because everyone deserves a chance to take care of their family," he said simply. "And because I have a feeling you're going to surprise yourself with what you can accomplish." As Lisa drove home that night, her car full of groceries and her pocket containing a business card that might change everything, she thought about hope. It had been so long since she'd felt it that she'd almost forgotten what it was like. But driving through the quiet streets toward home, toward Amy and Ben who were waiting for her, Lisa felt something she hadn't experienced in months. She felt like things might actually be okay. Monday morning arrived with autumn sunlight streaming through Lisa's small apartment window. She'd been awake since 5, staring at David's business card on her nightstand, working up the courage to make the call. Her hands shook as she dialed the number, half expecting someone to tell her it had all been a mistake, that successful CEOs didn't really help struggling single mothers they met in grocery stores. "Kim Technologies." "This is Rebecca," a warm voice answered. "Hi. I'm looking for David Kim," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Lisa Chen. He told me to call today about a possible job opportunity." "Oh, Lisa. Mr. Kim has been expecting your call. Please hold on." The brief wait felt like hours. Lisa paced her tiny kitchen, watching Amy eat the good cereal David had helped her buy, listening to Ben giggle at cartoons in the living room. Everything felt different this morning. The apartment looked the same, but hope had changed the atmosphere entirely. "Lisa, good morning." David's familiar voice came through the phone. "How are Amy and Ben doing?" The fact that he remembered her children's names brought tears to her eyes. "They're good." "Really good?" "The groceries." "David, I can't thank you enough. You don't need to thank me. Are you ready to talk about work?" 2 hours later, Lisa stood outside a gleaming office building downtown wearing her best outfit, a simple black dress she'd bought years ago for job interviews. It was slightly outdated but clean and professional. She'd spent an hour that morning with Amy, practicing what she might say in an interview. "Just be yourself, Mom," 8-year-old Amy had advised seriously. "You're really good at helping people." The Kim Technologies office occupied 3 floors of the building. When the elevator doors opened, Lisa stepped into a world she'd only seen in movies. Modern furniture, huge windows with city views, and people in crisp business clothes walking purposefully through open workspaces. Rebecca, David's assistant, greeted her warmly. "You must be Lisa. Mr. Kim is finishing a meeting, but let me show you around while we wait." The tour revealed something Lisa hadn't expected: normalcy. Despite the impressive surroundings, people were just working. Answering phones, typing on computers, having conversations about projects. It wasn't as intimidating as she'd imagined. "And this is our childcare center," Rebecca said, opening a door to reveal a bright, cheerful space filled with toys, books, and children of various ages being supervised by trained staff. "This is here?" "In the building?" Lisa asked, amazed. "Many of our employees are parents," Rebecca explained. "Mr. Kim believes that when people don't have to worry about their children during work hours, they can focus better on their jobs." David's office was nothing like Lisa had expected. Instead of an imposing desk and formal furniture, it felt more like a comfortable living room with a workspace attached. David stood up from a small conference table where he'd been meeting with 2 other employees. "Lisa, I'm so glad you came," he said, shaking her hand. "Please sit down. Can Rebecca get you anything? Coffee, water?" The interview didn't feel like an interview. David asked about her experience, but he seemed more interested in her as a person than her resume. He wanted to know how she handled difficult situations, what kind of work environment she preferred, and what her goals were. "I've never really thought about goals," Lisa admitted. "For the past few months, my only goal has been getting through each day. Making sure Amy and Ben are okay." "Those are pretty important goals," David said. "Taking care of your family, keeping everyone safe and fed and happy. That shows responsibility, problem-solving skills, and the ability to work under pressure." Lisa looked at him skeptically. "But that's just being a mom." "Lisa, do you know how many people I interview who can't handle pressure? Who quit when things get difficult? You've been managing a household, raising 2 kids, and looking for work while dealing with financial stress. You've been running a small organization under extremely challenging conditions." The position David offered was in customer service, helping clients who called with questions about the company's software. The salary was more than Lisa had ever made in her life, plus full benefits including health insurance and dental care. "There's also the child care benefit," David explained. "Amy and Ben can stay here during your work hours. The center helps with homework, provides snacks, and has activities for different age groups." Lisa felt overwhelmed. "David, this seems too good to be true. What if I'm not qualified? What if I mess up?" "Everyone starts somewhere," David said. "We'll provide training and you'll have support from the whole team." "But Lisa, I want you to know something. I didn't offer you this job out of pity. I offered it because I think you'll be good at it." Starting work the following Monday felt like entering a different universe. Lisa dropped Amy and Ben off at the childcare center, watching nervously as they were welcomed by friendly staff members who immediately engaged them in activities. Ben, shy at first, was soon building blocks with other children his age. Amy, always more outgoing, was already asking questions about the books on the reading shelf. The training program lasted 2 weeks. Lisa absorbed everything like a sponge, taking careful notes and staying late to practice on the computer system. Her trainer, a patient woman named Jenny, helped her learn not just the technical aspects of the job but the company culture. "People call when they're frustrated," Jenny explained. "Our job is to solve their problems, but also to make them feel heard and valued." Lisa discovered she had a natural talent for talking to upset customers. Her own experience with stress and difficulty had given her empathy and patience. She could hear the real problem behind someone's complaint and guide them to a solution without making them feel stupid or ignored. By her third week, Lisa was taking calls independently. Her supervisor, Mike, noted that her customer satisfaction ratings were among the highest on the team. "You have a gift for this," he told her during her one-month review. "Customers specifically ask to speak with you when they call back." The changes in Lisa's life happened gradually, then all at once. The steady paycheck meant she could pay bills on time, buy groceries without counting coins, and even save a little money each month. Amy and Ben thrived in the childcare program. Amy got help with homework from college interns, and her grades improved dramatically. Ben made friends and learned to read earlier than Lisa had expected. But the biggest change was in Lisa herself. For the first time in years, she felt valued at work. David made a point of checking in with her regularly, not in a micromanaging way, but to see how she was adjusting and if she needed any support. 3 months into the job, Mike approached Lisa about a promotion opportunity. "We're expanding the customer service team," he explained. "I'd like you to consider becoming a team leader. It would mean training new employees and handling more complex customer issues." Lisa's first instinct was to say no. She'd been comfortable in her current role, and the idea of more responsibility scared her. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she said. "Lisa," Mike said kindly, "ready is something you become by doing. 6 months ago, were you ready to work in tech? But here you are, and you're excellent at it." She took the promotion. The additional salary meant she could move Amy and Ben to a better apartment, one with 2 bedrooms so the kids didn't have to share a fold-out couch anymore. Amy got her own space to do homework, and Ben had room for all his toys. The new apartment was in a better school district. Amy started 4th grade at a school with newer textbooks and more resources. She joined the school's reading club and started talking about wanting to become a teacher someday. Ben enrolled in a preschool program that prepared him for kindergarten. 6 months later, Lisa was promoted again, this time to customer relations supervisor. Her job now involved managing a team of 12 customer service representatives, analyzing call patterns to improve service, and working directly with major clients on complex issues. "I never imagined I could do this kind of work," she told David during one of their periodic check-ins. "What part surprises you most?" he asked. "That I'm good at it," Lisa said. "That people respect my opinions and trust me with important decisions. That I can solve problems I never even knew existed." The woman who had once stood in a grocery store counting her last few coins was now earning a salary that allowed her family not just to survive, but to thrive. Amy and Ben had stable lives, good food, nice clothes, and educational opportunities Lisa had never dreamed possible. But perhaps most importantly, Lisa had discovered something about herself. She wasn't just someone who could survive difficult circumstances. She was someone who could lead, who could help others succeed, and who had skills and talents she'd never had the opportunity to develop. Looking back, she realized that the moment in the grocery store hadn't just changed her material circumstances. It had changed her entire understanding of what was possible for her life. 1 year and 3 months after that desperate day in the grocery store, Lisa Chen walked into the Kim Technologies boardroom, carrying a presentation folder and a heart full of purpose. As customer relations manager, she now oversaw a team of 25 employees and had become one of David's most trusted supervisors. But today, she wasn't here to talk about quarterly reports or customer satisfaction scores. "I have an idea," Lisa began, looking around the conference table at the company's senior leadership team. "And it might sound a little unusual coming from the customer service department." David smiled encouragingly from his seat at the head of the table. Over the past year, he'd watched Lisa transform from a nervous woman, afraid of her own shadow, into a confident leader who wasn't shy about proposing bold ideas. "During my lunch breaks, I've been volunteering at the downtown food bank," Lisa continued, "and I keep meeting people who remind me of myself from not too long ago. Single parents, mostly women who are smart and capable and hardworking, but they can't find stable employment because they don't have reliable childcare or the right kind of experience on their resumes." She opened her presentation folder, revealing pages of research she'd compiled during her personal time. "I've been thinking about this for months. What if Kim Technologies created a program specifically designed to identify and train people who are overlooked by traditional hiring practices?" The room was quiet, everyone listening intently as Lisa outlined her vision. She proposed a 6-month training program that would combine job skills education with personal development support. Participants would receive child care assistance, basic income support during training, and mentorship from current employees. The goal isn't charity, Lisa emphasized. It's about recognizing talent that already exists, but hasn't been given the right opportunity to develop. These people aren't looking for handouts. They're looking for a chance to prove what they can do. Maria Rodriguez, the head of human resources, leaned forward with interest. Do you have specific ideas about how we'd identify candidates? I've been working with 3 different community organizations, Lisa replied. The food bank, the women's shelter, and the community college's career services office. They all know people who would be perfect for a program like this. David had been quiet during Lisa's presentation, but she could see him thinking. She knew him well enough by now to recognize when he was considering something seriously. What kind of positions would these people be training for? Asked Tom, the operations manager. Customer service, data entry, administrative support, basic IT assistance, Lisa said. Entry-level positions that don't require specialized degrees but do require reliability, communication skills, and the ability to learn quickly. After the meeting, David asked Lisa to stay behind. This program, he said, it's personal for you, isn't it? Lisa nodded. A year ago, I was exactly like the people I'm talking about. I had all the skills needed to succeed, but no one could see past my circumstances long enough to give me a chance. And you want to be the person who gives others that chance? I want to be part of a company that does that, Lisa corrected. This isn't about me being generous. This is about Kim Technologies being the kind of place where people's potential matters more than their current situation. 3 weeks later, the board approved Lisa's proposal. The Second Chance Career Program would launch as a 6-month pilot with 10 participants. Lisa would oversee the program in addition to her regular duties, working with HR to develop curriculum and identify candidates. The application process was different from anything the company had done before. Instead of focusing on previous work experience or educational credentials, the screening emphasized problem-solving skills, communication ability, and personal resilience. Lisa interviewed each candidate personally, looking for the same qualities David had seen in her. People who were down but not defeated, who had the determination to rebuild their lives if given the tools and opportunity. The first group of participants was diverse in age and background, but united by their circumstances. There was Carmen, a 42-year-old former factory worker whose plant had closed down. Janet, a 28-year-old mom of 3 whose husband had left her with massive debts. Robert, a 55-year-old former construction worker who couldn't do physical labor anymore due to a back injury. Each had a story of setbacks and struggles, but also of persistence and hope. The training took place in a dedicated classroom space within the Kim Technologies building. Participants learned customer service techniques, basic computer skills, phone etiquette, and professional communication. But Lisa made sure the program addressed the whole person, not just their job skills. We're going to talk about things that other training programs might not cover, she told the group on their first day. Time management when you're dealing with personal stress. How to ask for help when you need it. How to believe in yourself when everything feels uncertain. Lisa shared her own story with the group, explaining how she'd stood in that grocery store just over a year ago, counting her last few coins. She wanted them to understand that their current circumstances didn't define their potential. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me, she said. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that the person running this program understands exactly where you are right now. And I want you to know that where you are right now is not where you have to stay. The program included practical support that went beyond job training. Participants received vouchers for professional clothing, help with resume writing, and access to the company's childcare facility during training hours. Most importantly, they were paired with mentors from within the company who provided ongoing guidance and encouragement. Lisa threw herself into the program with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She arrived early to set up the classroom, stayed late to provide individual support, and spent weekends researching best practices for adult education and career development. You're working too hard, David told her during one of their regular check-ins. I'm working exactly as hard as this deserves, Lisa replied. These people are trusting us with their futures, David. That's not something I take lightly. By month 3 of the pilot program, remarkable things were happening. Carmen had discovered she had a natural talent for handling technical support calls and was being considered for advanced training. Janet's organizational skills had caught the attention of the administrative department. Robert's gentle demeanor and patience made him perfect for training new employees. But the transformations went beyond professional development. Lisa watched as participants began carrying themselves differently, speaking with more confidence, and starting to believe that their dreams might actually be achievable. The program's success attracted attention from other companies and community organizations. Local news outlets wanted to interview Lisa about the initiative. Business journals wrote articles about Kim Technologies' innovative approach to hiring and training. We're getting calls from other CEOs asking how they can implement similar programs, David told. Lisa, you've started something bigger than just our company. 6 months after the program began, all 10 original participants had been hired for full-time positions, either at Kim Technologies or at partner companies who had heard about the program's success. The graduation ceremony was held in the main conference room, with family members invited to celebrate their achievements. Lisa stood at the front of the room, looking at the faces of people who had transformed their lives through hard work and determination. Amy and Ben sat in the front row, beaming with pride at their mom. "1.5 years ago," Lisa said, "I thought my life was over. I thought I'd failed as a mother, as a provider, as a person. I couldn't see any way forward, any possibility for change. But sometimes when we're in our darkest moments, someone extends a hand and shows us that there's still hope." She looked at David, who was standing near the back of the room with tears in his eyes. "David didn't just buy me groceries that day in the store," Lisa continued. "He bought me hope. And hope, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the world, because hope doesn't just change one person. It spreads. It multiplies. It creates possibilities that didn't exist before." After the ceremony, as families celebrated and new employees received their welcome packets, David pulled Lisa aside. "You know," he said, "that day in the grocery store I thought I was helping you. But you've helped this company become something I never imagined it could be." Lisa smiled, watching Carmen help Janet's children get cake while Robert showed someone's husband around the office. "You didn't just buy groceries that day, David, you bought a future. Not just for me and Amy and Ben, but for all these families. And all the families they'll help someday." The Second Chance Career Program became a permanent part of Kim Technologies, expanding to serve 50 participants per year. Lisa was promoted to Director of Community Partnerships, overseeing not just the training program but also the company's growing involvement in local community development initiatives. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came 3 months later, when Lisa was grocery shopping with Amy and Ben at the same store where her journey had begun. As they walked through the aisles, filling their cart with whatever the family needed and wanted, Lisa noticed a young woman standing alone near the bread section, counting coins with shaking hands. Lisa recognized the look of desperation, the careful calculation, the weight of impossible choices. Without hesitation, she approached the woman. "Excuse me," Lisa said gently. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed to be having a difficult day. Is there anything I can do to help?" The woman looked up with surprised, tear-filled eyes. "I'm okay," she said automatically. "Just choosing between a few things." Lisa smiled warmly. "What if you didn't have to choose? What if you could get whatever your family needs today?" And as Lisa reached for her wallet, ready to pay for a stranger's groceries, she thought about hope. How it travels from person to person, creating chains of kindness that stretch far beyond what any individual can imagine. How one moment of generosity in a grocery store had led to programs that changed dozens of lives, which would eventually touch hundreds more. The woman stared at Lisa in amazement, just as Lisa had once stared at David. And Lisa knew that this moment would mark the beginning of another transformation, another story of how hope multiplies when it's shared, because that's what hope does. It spreads, it grows. It turns one act of kindness into a legacy of change that continues long after the original gesture is forgotten. And it all started with a loaf of bread and a stranger who believed in the power of human potential.